Hello, learners. Now I'm here to teach you a very important and an interesting topic from world history. So, the topic is the French Revolution. So, if you look at this topic has a great ruler who actually emerged victorious and controlled France, none other than Napoleon Bonaparte. If you look at the French Revolution, so what is a revolution? See, this revolution was an organized change, a political movement which took place at France. So, who was the ruler of France during the French Revolution? The ruler of France was Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette. So, they were the rulers of France. They belonged to the Bourbon dynasty of France, which was a ruling dynasty, where we have the famous ruler of France called Louis XIV emerging. So, when you look at Louis XVI, he was an inefficient king, incapable, and he married an Austrian princess called Marie Antoinette. She desired to convert France into Austria, and France was having lots of financial stress at this point of time. So, in this background, we just touch up what led to the French Revolution. If you look at the causes for the French Revolution, the first cause we may address it as political causes. So, what were the political causes of the French Revolution? The first one, we could say it was the absolute monarchy. The king and the queen were never having a consolidated rule in France, and they were living in a luxurious palace called the Palace of Versailles, which was few kilometers away from Paris. So this royal absolutism was very much tough in France, where people found it very difficult to express their views, and having an inefficient king and a queen. So, a kind of distorted move was seen at France. The second one, there was no clear laws, or we can say it as there was no uniform laws at France. This led to lots of anarchy because France was divided into few provinces and each province had their own set of laws. So this again created a confusion, and the famous Estates General was never convened at all. See, Estate General is it's a kind of a group where, if you look at the society of France, it was divided as the first estate, second estate, and the third estate. And this estate general is a group of meeting where all the representatives of these three classes would come and sit and would have a discussion with the king. But that was never convened. So, for not convening the estates general, there was a chaotic condition at France. And the fourth reason was failure in all the wars. Failure in all the wars. Say, for example, France began to fail in all the wars. The Austrian Succession War, France failed. The 7 Years' War, France failed. And in the American War of Independence, she was never compensated well. So all these led to a heavy financial stress for France. So these were the major political causes for the French Revolution. Moving on to the economic causes. What were the economic causes for the French Revolution? Again, when we see the economic causes, just before the revolution, France had a famine. And in this famine, the rulers, that is Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette, did not take any considerate step to overcome it. And there's a very popular saying that when the people went and met the queen and asked the queen that we don't have bread to eat, there's a famous say telling that eat cake. So that was a condition of France where famine was there. And there was a severe unemployment problem which led to poverty. Plus, France had a huge financial debt. So she had an international debt where she acquired loan from Britain and Spain and Austria. So there was a big financial crisis also. Almost France was on the verge of bankruptcy. So these were the economic causes of the French Revolution. Coming on to the next cause, the social causes. When you look at the social causes for the French Revolution, France was divided, the French society was divided into three classes. It was divided into three classes. And when we break down the classes, it's called the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. So if you look at the first estate, it was with the clergy. So all the church people and all of them were holding that first estate. So they paid no tax. If you look at the second estate, the nobles, the aristocrats were actually here. So they also paid no tax. And the third estate, we have all the common people. So the entire tax actually was on the third estate. Plus, the third estate had to pay a tax called tithe, which was 5%. They have to pay to the clergy. So the entire financial burden of the society went into the third estate, and that is why the third estate organized themselves into group and they became revolutionaries. So all the educated and the learned men were there in the third estate. So this is the background of the French Revolution. So when you look into the details of all these, for our mains, you need to write all the split up, like you have to explain absolute monarchy, how uniform laws were not there, example. So then again, when who created the Estates General, when was the last Estate General meeting, and how we have to explain some war. I'm just giving you an overall recap of how the revolution actually went on and what were the major causes of it. So when you look at all of these, so what happened as an immediate cause when we look at it, the French government decided that let them seek some opportunities to find out ways to bring in revenues. So the historic Estates General was convened in 1789. Exactly when you look into the date, it is 5th May 1789, the historic Estate General meeting was convened. So it was convened at Paris. So it was here decided in this Estate General meeting, the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate did participate. And when all the representatives have entered, the second estate and the first estate was asked to pay tax by the king. But there was a kind of a quarrel between them where the second estate walked out from the room. So this incident is popularly called as the aristocratic revolution. And meantime, the king promised the third estate that he would do the needful. But as expected, due to financial failures and economic stress, the king could not do any reform or introduce anything for the third estate, which led the third estate to break a historic fort called Bastille. So Bastille was now at this Bastille was it's called the fort of the old regime. Now Bastille Fort, like a red fort, this Bastille Fort was located at Paris. So people went and stormed Bastille and broke Bastille to the ground. So this is the outbreak of the French Revolution. Outbreak of the French Revolution. So we start the year 1789. So when you look at French Revolution, the entire Europe was affected by the French Revolution because the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity were born here during this period. When you break the French Revolution, we cut it into few periods. The first stage, we call it as the fall of Bastille. So stage 1, fall of Bastille. The second stage, we call it as the reign of Robespierre. The reign of Robespierre. And the third stage, we call it as the era of the Directory. And the fourth stage, we call it as the era of Napoleon. So Napoleonic era. So we divide the French Revolution into 4 stages. So FR, French Revolution, is divided into 4 stages. So these are the 4 stages. UPSC may ask you a separate question about, write a short note on fall of Bastille. So, or the reign of Robespierre, or the directly Napoleonic era. And when you cut Napoleonic era into 2, we say Napoleon as the consul, the first consul of France, and we can say Napoleon as the dictator of France. So I'm not dumping you with more years here. And this Napoleonic era, when you take it, It will be from 1799 to 1815. So these are passing by one. But Napoleon as a consul, 1799 to 1804. Napoleon as, dictator. Napoleon as a dictator. Napoleon as a dictator, when you have a look, it's 1804 to 1815. So France saw the first dictator during this period. So this falls under Napoleon's internal reforms. What did Napoleon do to develop France? How did Napoleon overcome the French Revolution? That is why there is always one popular say called Napoleon as the son of the revolution. He is the son of the French Revolution because he's a child of the revolution. And this period we call it as the external reforms of Napoleon. That is nothing but we call it as the wars of Napoleon. The Battle of Trafalgar, the Battle of Ulm, Spanish Ulcer, the Battle of Nations, and finally the Battle of Waterloo was fought in 1815 where Napoleon was defeated. So once Napoleon was defeated, he was exiled to St. Helena in the southern Atlantic, and again the Bourbon dynasty took control of France and the absolute monarchy was established. So to make the world into a peaceful way, so Austria took a lead, and in 1815 the Congress of Vienna was convened. So this is the overall idea about the French Revolution.